Cheryl is an integrative health author and a natural medicine practitioner. She is frequently consulted for her opinions on natural health by prestigious publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Prevention Magazine. She is a well-known advocate for bridging the worlds of mainstream and natural medicine to achieve optimal health outcomes. She has a wealth of knowledge on glutathione, which she will be joining us today to speak about. And I know that we're all looking forward to hearing her information. And at this point, I would like to turn things over to today's presenter, Cheryl Myers. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. As Jennifer pointed out, I've worked in this industry for about 16 or 17 years, working in integrative health. I had worked previous to that in mainstream medical care, and I believe that the best opportunity we have for getting people healthy again is to combine intelligently a variety of avenues to achieve optimal health. And perhaps that is a prescription drug, or maybe that is mainstream medicine or surgery or an x-ray. But it might be walking your dog, and it might be eating a salad for lunch. And regardless of the intervention, if it helps people to achieve their best wellness, I think it should be treated with respect and studied accordingly. Which leads me to today's discussion about something that I think is a marvelous breakthrough in health, and that is looking at the role that glutathione plays both in longevity and in a number of diseases, especially neurological diseases. Now, glutathione, let's just talk definitions for a moment. For those of you who are not familiar, glutathione is called the master antioxidant. There's some authors who call it the mother of all antioxidants. And unfortunately in this world, I think we overuse the word antioxidant to the point where people don't think of it as anything special anymore. I mean, gosh, vitamin C is an antioxidant, and if you eat some blueberries, they have antioxidants, and selenium in your Brazil nuts is an antioxidant, and even Coca-Cola says that there's antioxidants in their products. So what's the difference between all these antioxidants? Well, some of the damage that occurs in our bodies is caused by what we call oxidative stress. It creates free radicals in our body that, in a domino effect, start to cause damage to certain tissues. And there's lots and lots of things that can trigger this oxidative stress. But what's important to understand is it's not all created equal. And some oxidative stress is a pesky mosquito that your body easily slaps down with any of a number of the tools that it has at hand. But some types of oxidative stress are like dropping a bomb in a small village. And for that kind of oxidative stress, we need an antioxidant that has amazing superpowers, and that's where glutathione comes in. Glutathione is so important that it is made by the body. It's not something you take in from the diet. Your body only makes two antioxidants, superoxide dismutase and glutathione. And if you made me pick which one was more important, I'd have to lean in the glutathione direction, because not only is it such a superpowered antioxidant that there are free radicals in your body that nothing else can adequately quench besides glutathione. So there's certain types of damage that the only thing that's going to save you is having enough glutathione on board. Secondly, it's so important that it's made in every single cell in your body. And it's made in your liver and released into the bloodstream. So your cells are bathed in glutathione inside and out from the moment that you are born. Glutathione is critical to life. People who are unable to properly metabolize glutathione tend to suffer from extreme illness and live very short lives. Now, in addition to being a mega antioxidant or a super antioxidant, glutathione does lots of other jobs in the body as well. It certainly wears a lot of different hats, which is one of the reasons it's so incredibly precious. It helps to regenerate spent antioxidants. Now, what this really means is that you spend some money to get a healthy organic diet, and you eat lots of fruits and vegetables, and you want all of the nutritional value from your food, right? Otherwise, why would you take such care in preparing such healthy food for yourself and for your family? Well, it turns out that if you don't have enough glutathione on board, then the antioxidants, like the vitamin C and the vitamin E that's in your food, does a little bit of help, works for a short period of time, and then it's gone. It's out of circulation, and it's over with. It can no longer provide any health benefits for you. But if you have adequate levels or even abundant levels of glutathione on board, those antioxidants can be regenerated over and over again. And so the health benefits, the nutritional benefits from that healthy diet have a much more profound impact on your health because they can exert greater power. It also boosts the immune system. It is crucial. The body uses glutathione to fight both infections, including chronic infections, and cancer. In fact, in people who have chronic infective illnesses, one of the hallmark features is reduced levels of active glutathione in the body. Glutathione also is essential to protect against the ravages of aging. Some of you out there who like to pay attention to science when it comes to health news might have heard of telomeres before. And telomeres are little hard caps on the end of our genes that help to, because of their protecting the gene strands so it doesn't come unraveled. And I've heard a very smart scientist say that it's like the cap at the end of your shoelace, that keeps the shoelace from unraveling and makes it last longer. Well, the shorter the telomere, the fewer times that gene or that cell can replicate itself. You know, we don't have the same cells in our body that we had 5 or 10 years ago. Our cells are always undergoing a series of destruction and new creation of fresh new cells to take their place. When your body is no longer able, or when that cell is no longer able to replace itself, then you are not going to last very much longer, because the ability to replace your cells is tantamount to good health and to aging. Glutathione is one of the most crucial elements in your body to protect telomere length. So by protecting telomere length, we help those genes have the ability to help the cells replicate themselves longer and longer. When we look at studies of people who are what we call supercentenarians, these are the people who not only live past the age of 100, but people who are in relatively good health, folks who still have their mental faculties, people who don't have a lot of chronic diseases. There's not a lot that they have in common. Some of them drank whiskey every day. Some of them never had a drop of alcohol in their lives. Some are vegetarians. Some are heavy meat eaters. Some live in the mountains. Some live in the desert. All of these individuals have very different characteristics, but there are a few things they have in common. And one is that when you look at people that are supercentenarians, they have either been blessed with the genetics, the lifestyle, or both that has made them able to be abundant producers of glutathione. Their glutathione production has lasted longer than the vast majority of individuals, and that's why they're aging so well, or at least one of the reasons why. It's also required to repair DNA. Our DNA gets damaged all the time, usually by oxidative stress hanging around inside of our genes that kind of delicately or kind of damage the delicate strands of DNA that are so important for proper cellular replication. If the DNA is damaged too much, the cell can't replicate itself, or it replicates itself with mistakes, which makes it less efficient, or it replicates itself and becomes cancerous. So repairing DNA is crucially important. What's one of the key features in the body that is used to help repair damaged DNA? Glutathione, which leads to normal cell life, replication, division, and death of cells so that they can be generated. And last but certainly not least, one of the most crucial jobs of glutathione happens in our liver. When you are exposed to, for example, we all heard about how BPA in plastics is so disruptive to our endocrine system, about how unhealthy that is. Well, if you've been exposed to some BPA in plastics, how does it get out of your body? Your liver grabs it and tosses it in the intestinal tract, and it's washed away the next time you go to the bathroom. When you have a shot of tequila, that tequila is detoxified in the liver, and those materials are put in the gut, and out they go. When you take a dose of prescription medication, again, after it's outlived its usefulness, the liver takes it apart, takes it out of the bloodstream, takes it apart, and disposes of it. The process by which the liver disposes of these compounds, or pesticides or herbicides or things that it finds in foods, also your liver gets rid of your old used up hormones. You know, let's say you're a woman and you don't have very good liver function, you're going to have more dysfunctional estrogen floating around than someone whose liver is functioning at an optimal level. And the same is true for men. Used up oxidized cholesterol, old cholesterol that your body no longer uses, your liver grabs a hold of and puts it in the intestinal tract. that process is called phase 1 and phase 2 glucuronidation. A lot of people just abbreviate it phase 1 and phase 2. You cannot complete phase 2 unless you have enough glutathione on board. So more glutathione means moving toxins to the liver safely and faster. Less glutathione means there's going to be a traffic jam, and you may suffer some ill health consequences from that traffic jam. So when we talk about why glutathione is called the master antioxidant or the mother of all antioxidants, it's because its ability to arrest or quench some of the most damaging compounds in our body. One of the worst is called hydroxyl radicals or hydroxyl-free radicals. They are dangerous to everything. They are true assassin rogues that are out there doing nothing but creating destruction. They can damage fats, the amino acids, carbohydrates, even DNA itself, and we know how dangerous that can be. Glutathione is unsurpassed. There is nothing that comes close to the effective way that glutathione can neutralize that hydroxyl radical so that it does not continue to cause damage. However, as with most nutrients and natural compounds, there's two faces to glutathione. On the one hand, we have the super potent antioxidant. We have the crucial detoxification compound. We have the immune system booster. We have all of these wonderful roles that active glutathione, which active glutathione is also called reduced glutathione. That's the good side of glutathione. Once glutathione has used up all its superpowers, it flips to the other side of the coin and it becomes inactive glutathione, which does not help you. In fact, it creates a certain level of stress on your body. So let's look a little bit at the differences. Reduced glutathione is sometimes abbreviated GSH. That's the active form. This is the superstar that you want more of in your body. This still has all of its amazing powers, and it still can provide you with tremendous health benefits. Once it becomes oxidized, or if it's oxidized in the first place, it becomes a form of glutathione called GSSG. And when GSSG is broken down, one of two things can happen. It can be recycled by the body, which means that you have to expend some of your own energy and your own antioxidant stores in order to try to regenerate it, or it's broken down into its component amino acids. So when we are looking for improvements in health, we want to improve this side of the increase of the equation, but we want to decrease this side of the equation. That's not an easy thing to do. So when I am talking to folks, when I'm out lecturing, this is the description I give. If you need a loan, do you go to the guy who's completely tapped out? He has nothing left to give you. He can barely take care of himself. Or do you go to the guy who's rolling in the dollars? Do you go to the guy whose pockets are so full that he's more than happy to help you out in your current situation? Well, that's kind of the difference between oxidized or inactive glutathione. It has nothing left to give. Or reduced active glutathione, meaning that it has all kinds of resources that it's more than willing to share with you. In a healthy adult, more than 90% of your cellular glutathione should be in the active form. That's called GSH. And less than 10% should be in the inactive form. When we're children, that ratio is even more because children and young teens are at the apex of their glutathione manufacturing capabilities, and unfortunately, it all starts to slide downhill from there. But at least 90% active glutathione, and you will probably be in pretty good health. But what they have found is it's not just your overall glutathione levels that are important, it's the ratio of the active, which should be very, very high, to the inactive, which should be very, very low. That ratio is crucial as well. As we'll see in some of the diseases for which we have found disruptions in this ratio, especially today we're going to talk about some of the neurological diseases as well. So let's start with what happens to our glutathione level. And remember I said it's all downhill? Well, by the time we are 60, 65 years old, we are making about to 50% less active glutathione. Our machinery is slowing down. And the more we age, and of course it varies a little bit from person to person. Some people have very low levels to begin with, even when they're 20 years old, because of genetics or because of lifestyle or because of certain challenges to glutathione that we'll learn about in a moment. But overall, up to 60%, up to 50% less active glutathione manufactured in the body by the time you're 65 years of age. But there are conditions that also impact glutathione levels. I've mentioned genetics. Some people are just not blessed with good machines to make glutathione. Certain diseases deplete glutathione synthesis. Poor nutrition, excessive exposure to toxins and pollution deplete the body of glutathione. Infections, trauma, and here's the biggie, Tylenol, acetaminophen. Doctors for a long time have been recommending acetaminophen, one brand name is Tylenol, because they think it's the safe pain reliever that's over the counter. You know, ibuprofen causes kidney slowdown and gastric ulcers, and naproxen and Aleve, all these other drugs do the same. So they have always felt that because Tylenol is gentle on your stomach, that somehow it's the safer alternative, which just isn't true. Tylenol is the number one cause of acute liver failure in America. So people who have acute or sudden onset liver failure, acetaminophen is the number one cause. It is also the number one cause of overdose seen in emergency rooms. And sadly, less than 50% of the people who show up in the emergency room with a Tylenol or an acetaminophen overdose were trying to overdose. Most of them accidentally overdosed because the therapeutic level, the levels of acetaminophen and Tylenol they sell in the stores is extremely close to the toxic level. And if you don't understand that many of the products you're taking may have Tylenol in them, I have people who take Tylenol PM to sleep, an extra strength Tylenol headache formula for their headaches, and then they have a low back strain and the doctor puts them on Vicodin. And they don't realize that Vicodin is a narcotic blended with Tylenol, or the Vicodin stops working and the doctor ups them to Percocet, and they don't understand that Percocet is an even stronger narcotic blended with acetaminophen or Tylenol. So we see a lot of issues with liver damage and acetaminophen. When trying to create an analogy, let's think about this for a minute. You've heard of matter and antimatter? Well, there's glutathione and anti-glutathione. And if anything's anti-glutathione, it's acetaminophen. The way that Tylenol and acetaminophen damage or destroy the liver is by interrupting its ability to correctly metabolize glutathione. So just think of these people, maybe they're friends of yours, maybe it's you yourself, who has unknowingly been using Tylenol for years and years and years because it's the safer thing to use for pain. All your life you have been reducing that glutathione ratio and reducing your overall levels of glutathione. Now let's look at this. I found this a rather shocking study. These are healthy children versus children with autism. In healthy kids, this is when they are at the peak of their glutathione machine making. They have less than 1% in the inactive form. Most of the child's glutathione is in the active form, unless that child has autism. And children with autism have only 60% of their glutathione in the active form and 40% or more in the inactive form. This is a huge problem. Additionally, they have recently found that women who used a lot of Tylenol prior to getting pregnant and used a lot of Tylenol while they were pregnant had statistically more children on the autism spectrum than women who never consumed Tylenol. So moving on from that, let's look at some other examples of glutathione research. And all of these are cellular studies or intravenous studies because glutathione is really hard to work with. So I looked at people who have HIV. Well, people that are HIV positive, who have active HIV infection, have lower levels of glutathione. So in this cellular study, they supplemented back glutathione and were able to reduce the spread of the tuberculous bacteria in people with HIV. Many cancer drugs damage the nervous system and the brain. So in this Japanese study, they gave individuals either their regular chemotherapy alone or their chemotherapy with IV glutathione, and the results were amazing. I do not know why this is not standard of practice in all oncology clinics. that they found that 73% of the people who got the chemotherapy had damage to either permanent or temporary damage to their brain and nervous system, whereas only 22% of the people who got the same chemotherapy but also received IV glutathione, so triple the number had adverse effects and damage versus the group that actually had access to the glutathione. Here's a study on Parkinson's disease, a very common, unfortunately, neurological disease. Parkinson's disease is also associated with reduced glutathione levels and an alteration in that ratio. People with Parkinson's have higher levels of glutathione in the inactive form, which means glutathione that doesn't do anything for them. These individuals were given doses of glutathione every day for 30 days. So this is only a 30-day study. At the end, a 42% decline in disability, virtually cut disability in half simply by administering glutathione every day for 30 days. People with acne have lower levels of serum glutathione than people without this disease. So the more severe the acne, when they examine, there's a strong correlation that low levels of glutathione in the bloodstream are associated with worse acne, and people who have mild acne tend to have a little bit better levels of glutathione. Sperm morphology is influenced by glutathione. So when we look at men who are having trouble with properly shaped sperm and therefore having problems with fertility and survivability, especially when people are working with artificial insemination or in vitro fertilization, they found that glutathione can greatly improve the health of the sperm to make fertility more of an option. Even when we look at viral infections like the H1N1 influenza, also called the swine flu, these individuals who have this viral infection have lowered levels of glutathione in the body, 18% lower total glutathione, 10% lower plasma compared to controls. So reduced amounts of glutathione are speculated to also be linked to the lethality of this disease. Not very many people die of this vaccine, but there's always some who do, and some believe that individuals who have low levels of glutathione already are the individuals that are most likely to have severe adverse effects to this influenza H1N1 vaccine. So the question remains, how do we help individuals get more glutathione into their body? So I want you to think for a moment about a sweet washerwoman. And this washerwoman is essential to you. She's been with you your whole life, and she has to last your entire lifetime. You love her very much, and you want her to last for many, many years. So how do you make her job easier? If you want to make your washerwoman's life easier, do you give her more dirty laundry? She's going to have to work harder. She's going to have to not take a break. She's going to have red, rough hands. She's going to have a sore back. If you give her more dirty laundry, then she's going to have to work harder and she's going to wear out faster. If you want to relieve her, you have to give her clean laundry, because then maybe she can take a break, she can get a breath of fresh air, she can rub some lotion in her hands. So when we talk about glutathione, our goal is not to raise glutathione, because we don't know if it's dirty laundry or clean laundry. Dirty laundry creates stress, but clean laundry alleviates the stress. So we have to know, how do we get this kind, not just any glutathione, but the active form into the body? Because glutathione oxidizes like that. It, in a heartbeat, because it is so superpowered, it will give up its superpowers very, very rapidly. So you have to jump through a lot of hoops if you really want to get active into the bloodstream. So there haven't been very many options previously. I will talk about this first because this is the one I have a lot of experience with, and that's intravenous glutathione. That's hooking up a tube to the arm with a needle or using a syringe and putting the needle directly into a vein and administering glutathione. But this is really expensive. So some of the clinics I have visited charge as much as $1,000 for a glutathione session. That includes the clinic visit and setting up the IV and the venipuncture, all of those different things. So if you have Parkinson's disease and you wanted to replicate that study where people had infusions of glutathione every day for 30 days, that would set you back $30,000. How many people have $30,000 a month to spend on IV glutathione administration? And I don't believe that insurance covers it because they consider it experimental. But IV absolutely works. That's why all these research studies I've told you about is generally talking about IV glutathione, because that's one way to get active glutathione directly into the bloodstream. Another way is to use a precursor. This is a raw material. So that is called NAC, N-acetylcysteine. This is available as a dietary supplement. You don't have to go to a clinic to get it. N-acetylcysteine works. If you add more raw materials to the body, the glutathione machine has the ability to make glutathione, but there's a couple drawbacks. If you are 25 years old and you're taking glutathione for healthy longevity or because you've heard it might help your sports performance, this will work for you. But what if you have a neurological disease? What if you have early onset Parkinson's? What if you have multiple sclerosis? What if you're 65 or 70 years old? Your machine is no longer functioning the way it's supposed to be. And so you can throw raw materials in until the cows come home, but that doesn't mean that machine is going to be able to gear up and make more glutathione. So what we have to do for those individuals is bypass the machine entirely if we want adequate and predictable levels of active glutathione in the body. Another way is that there are oral glutathione products available in the market, on the internet and in health food stores, but there's a problem. Digestion oxidizes glutathione. It doesn't matter if you are wrapped in fat or if if you have a glutathione that is enteric coated. It's not the stomach acid exposure that changes the glutathione or flips it to the oxidized form. It's the digestive process itself. And so when we try to take glutathione orally, what we end up is putting more dirty laundry in the body that causes additional stress on our washerwoman to try to create more glutathione. That's one of the reasons why I'm excited about this recent research that's been done in France. And they have discovered a way to stabilize glutathione so it gets into the bloodstream in its active form. First, it's a sublingual tablet. So you bypass digestion entirely. So that's one of the advantages. You don't have to worry about the oxidizing effects of digestion. Number two, it's stabilized with some unique polyphenols from punicalagins or from pomegranate called punicalagins. Therefore, it keeps it in its active form while it's sitting on the shelf. It keeps it in its active form while it's sitting in your hand. Keeps it in its active form while it's under your tongue dissolving. And so you put these two together, and it's the first oral system I have seen that actually has been proven to increase active glutathione in the body. So one of the study that's just recently been completed, they used 25 individuals with signs of metabolic syndrome. So they weren't necessarily elderly and they did not have a neurological disease, but what they were doing was looking specifically at how does this work to change glutathione ratios in the body. So everyone was overweight and everyone had at least one of the two following. They either had glucose intolerance, so pre-diabetes, high blood pressure, and or high triglycerides in the body. They only did 21 days. So this is relatively rapid acting, and they gave them active sublingual glutathione, unprotected glutathione, or N-acetylcysteine. So what they found is that the active glutathione raised the ratio 65% better than NAC and 230% better than unprotected glutathione. It absolutely increased the level of the active glutathione better than either NAC or unprotected. When they looked at the ability to recycle antioxidants, they found that it helped vitamin E exert more potent benefits 50% better than NAC and 277% better than unprotected glutathione, which actually damaged vitamin E, used up vitamin E to try to recycle itself. The active glutathione raised HDL levels by 5%, and 5% doesn't seem like much. But did you know, for women, for every 1% you raise HDLs, you decrease your cardiovascular risk by 3%. And for men, every 1% you raise HDLs, you decrease your cardiovascular risk by 2%. So this is actually, in only 3 weeks, a 10 to 15% reduction in cardiovascular risk. Reduced triglycerides 10%. The unprotected glutathione actually made the good cholesterol levels go down, which is something we do not want, and neither the NAC or the unprotected glutathione helped with the HDLs or lowered the triglycerides. So some real differences in whether you're boosting active glutathione in the body or inactive. Here's a graphical representation of those study results. The red line is unprotected glutathione, and you will notice after 11 days, it actually reduces the amount of glutathione in the body in the active form versus the sublingual form actually increases it. 78-point difference after only 11 days. There's another study that looked, this is the same study but a different data point, found that when they looked at, this is overall glutathione, this is the ratio. What they found is the NAC improves the ratio somewhat, but the active glutathione improves the ratio 65% better than NAC and a whopping 230% better than inactive glutathione, which, look, actually drives that ratio in the wrong direction. Why? It's adding to the wrong side of the equation. It's adding to the dirty laundry pile. It's not adding to the clean laundry pile. That's why I think that this is such an amazing breakthrough, because for the first time we're going to be able to help people have access to active glutathione without necessarily having to pay for intravenous therapy. There's a great number of diseases that are documented with links to low glutathione, and many of them are neurological. So multiple sclerosis, when we look at autism and autism spectrum disorder, when we look at bipolar disorder, we look at migraines, Parkinson's disease, a lot of work on glutathione and Parkinson's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, depression, chronic fatigue. When we look at even Lyme's disease, I know it's not technically a neurological disorder, but a lot of individuals who have chronic Lyme's infections have an enormous amount of neuro types of symptomology and damage. Why? Well, glutathione seems to have a particular, I left out the big one, Alzheimer's disease as well. Glutathione seems to have a particular affinity for being able to protect nerve tissue. So, for example, with Parkinson's disease is really a brain disease. There's nothing wrong with your arms or your legs. There's nothing wrong with the nerves in your arms and your legs. What's wrong is with the center in your brain that helps to dictate voluntary motion. And that's called the substantia, that area is called the substantia nigra in the brain. And we see extremely rapid die-off of healthy cells in the substantia nigra in people who have Parkinson's disease. The more cells that die, the greater the level of dysfunction. So what is our goal? Keep those cells alive. We may not be able to cure Parkinson's disease, but if we can help to arrest that premature cellular death, then you can help stabilize symptoms. You may even improve symptoms, as we saw in that 30-day intravenous study, cut disability by 42% after only 30 days of use, and help to stabilize it so that we see a dramatically reduced progression. So only research has demonstrated that you have to increase the active form of glutathione. The ratio is crucially important. A lot of the dosages that are used in sublingual dosing in the work that's being done in France are doing 150 milligrams 2 to 3 times daily, but in extreme cases, they're increasing to 4 times per day. So this is the information that we have thus far put together on new ways to get glutathione, active glutathione into the body. I believe that we are perched on the cusp of an enormous explosion of research on glutathione, because prior to this, the effective studies on glutathione were either cellular studies where they just had cells in a petri dish, because then they didn't have to worry about the oxidizing effects on glutathione of trying to have absorption, or intravenous, which was an invasive procedure and extremely costly. For the first time, we're going to be able to see some oral glutathione research in the upcoming decade on a variety of diseases. I believe the first targets that we're going to see are the neurological diseases. Again, I wish as a cure, but more realistically, to reduce symptoms and to slow the progression of the diseases. So I thank you very much for your kind attention, and I see we already have some questions, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you very much, Cheryl. And we do have questions already in the queue. Before we get started on answering those questions, I would just like to remind the audience, because this does come up, yes, we have recorded today's presentation, and the file will be archived on the terrytalksnutrition.com website on Monday. So if you would like to come back and listen again, or if you have friends or family that you think would find this information valuable, you can feel free to direct them there on Monday, and they will be able to listen to the archived recording. A handout of today's presentation was sent earlier today. If you did not receive it, please check your spam folder, and you will sometimes find that it lands there by accident. If it is not there and you would still like a copy, feel free to send us a chat message through today's presentation, or you can send an email to webinars@terrytalksnutrition.com and ask for the handout, and I would be happy to forward it to you. So let's go ahead and look over today's questions. So Cheryl, the first question we have today is what are the best sources for good glutathione? Are there different amounts required at different ages?
Excellent question. The best sources, if you need an immediate spike in glutathione, then IV is the way to go. Intravenous administration is the fastest way to get bountiful amounts of active into your bloodstream. And I have seen this used for people who have severe flu symptoms. It really does help to bring them out of the severity of their symptomology. But most people are not using glutathione for those short bursts or those quick kinds of interventions. They're using it for long-term chronic illnesses, in which case I believe the sublingual form is probably the best to do that. If you are a young person under the age of 30 and you don't have a lot of chronic health issues, using N-acetylcysteine will increase your body's glutathione levels. But if you're a little older, if you have a chronic disease, I would think that the best thing to do is to bypass the glutathione-making machine and just put active glutathione in your body, which is something you can do with a sublingual form. Are there different amounts required for different ages? Technically, yes, but in practice, perhaps not. So when you are 40 years old, most individuals, on average, are making more glutathione in their body than people that are 70 years old. So one would think that the 40-year-old would need less than the 70-year-old. However, if they're using it for a chronic illness, the chronic illness may itself interfere with the body's ability to make glutathione to such an extent that maybe the younger person needs even more. So although a lot of this research is very early on the oral form, on the sublingual form, this is what I recommend to individuals who have chronic illnesses. Get a calendar. They'll probably give it away to you free at the bank or at your church or at the grocery store. Get a paper calendar and take 60 seconds a day. You are worth 60 seconds a day, and write down a number. Every day, evaluate your symptoms. Let's just say it's Parkinson's disease. So let's start on day 1. Before you start using a sublingual form, write down your symptoms. 0 being none, 10 being the worst they've ever been. So maybe that number is a 7. Maybe that number is a 6. What you want to do is write those numbers down for 2 months. At the end of 2 months, look at those numbers. They should be 20, 30, 40% lower than they were when you started. So if you started at 6s, 7s, and 8s, by the end of 2 months, they should be at 3s and 4s and 5s, much lower numbers. I think that's important because sometimes changes happen so gradually in chronic disorders that people miss them. They miss that they have improved until they see it in black and white. If there is no significant improvement, that's the time to increase dosage, to go from 150 twice daily to 153 or 4 times daily, and then do the calendar another month or 2. Some people do feel a difference very quickly. Some people take a little bit longer. It's highly variable. Good question.
Okay, and our next question is, would glutathione be helpful for someone who is 84 years old and has what may be a form of Parkinson's disease and breast cancer?
Absolutely. First off, when we look at every single type of Parkinson's disease and every single type of cancer, we see a disruption when we look at the ratio of active to inactive. So both conditions could perhaps quite nicely benefit from putting more active glutathione in the body, which helps to improve that ratio. So yes, I would certainly give that a try.
Does glutathione stimulate the immune system? We have a person who has lupus and needs to avoid things that are immune system stimulators.
I'll give the lawyer answer. Yes, no. It is, the immune system cannot function without glutathione, period. When you have adequate levels of a glutathione on board, your immune system behaves in a more healthy manner. And when you have low levels of glutathione, your immune system is weaker. But it is not technically an immune stimulant. And so when we look at immune stimulants like echinacea irritates your immune system. It blows the bugle really, really loudly. It calls out the troops. And that's why you have some issues with echinacea and autoimmune diseases. But glutathione is not technically a stimulant. It is simply providing one of the resources that the immune system needs. And they have found in lupus and in other autoimmune diseases like multiple sclerosis that the amounts of active versus inactive body glutathione in the body are very, very skewed. So it would probably be something, of course, I always say that my lecture and providing you with information does not replace your doctor's advice. Your doctor knows your medical history. They know the quirks of your current physical ailment. But for information to share with your doctor, I say absolutely this may be something that's very useful for someone with lupus.
Cheryl, I will say your voice is fading out a little bit on the end of your phrases, so maybe if you can adjust your microphone.
Okay.
We have a couple of questions, so I'm just going to consolidate them into one. Questions relating to how can you tell what your personal ratio is of active to oxidized glutathione? Is there a test to show what your levels are? And is it something that you can test daily?
The testing that they do in laboratories, I am not sure that that is commercially available. I have not seen it be commercially available. The way to establish whether or not you need glutathione is whether or not you have a disease that responds to glutathione. If you are an otherwise healthy individual and you're 45 years old and you just want to make sure you've got something on board to help you with healthy longevity, by all means, take a tablet a day. You probably don't need to take a therapeutic dose, but take one a day to just help nudge up your glutathione levels. That's fine. You're not going to hurt anything. You're not going to shut down glutathione manufacture in your body. But if you do have a neurological disease, if you have Parkinson's disease, if you have multiple sclerosis, if you have ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, if you have Lyme's disease, chronic Lyme's infection, especially with neurological features, if you have Alzheimer's disease, if you have autism or ADD, ADHD, you do not need to test because by having that disease, those are all correlated with disruptions in active to inactive glutathione in the body.
All right.
I see a lot of questions about how to obtain the sublingual form. Yes, you could search. You could order from France. Yes, you could do a Google search and find it that way. But it is available in the United States in the health food market too. So you should probably be able to find the clinically studied sublingual form. There are the one that you need to look for. Make sure that you have the system, the pomegranate system, on board. I know it sounds like, oh, how nice, it has this extra fruit. It's really not the fruit. It's one single compound from pomegranate called punicalagins, and this is one of the keys to keeping that glutathione from oxidizing. It protects the glutathione while it's on the shelf, while it's melting in the mouth, so that it can be absorbed in its active form. So it really is a two-step process. Make sure both are on board.
So a question about the sublingual delivery. Does it have to be completely dissolved, and what happens if you swallow it before it's completely dissolved?
Well, a little bit. Of course, when individuals in a 21-day study, there's going to be some people that are swallowing more than others. A little bit of swallowing is not a problem. Even if you accidentally swallowed the whole tablet, one dose is not going to harm you. But if you used a sublingual and instead of putting it under tongue, you chewed it every single day for the next 6 months, you're going to see a real worsening in your ratio because you're oxidizing all the glutathione. So a little bit that gets swallowed, or a little bit that gets, it's not an issue. Usually, sometimes the flavoring system, it's the clinical group in France that's worked with this. When I've looked at their work, have devised it in such a way that it's a little bit sticky when it's wet, so that it sticks better to the mucosal tissue in the mouth under the tongue, so it's not as easy to dislodge and swallow. Some people takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes to dissolve, some 20 minutes. Do not eat or drink while it is in your mouth. I see another question that asks if it has to be on an empty stomach or with food. It doesn't matter because it's not going in your tummy. It is being absorbed in your mouth. Just do not eat or do not drink while it's in your mouth. Let it completely dissolve. And then I would recommend waiting another 5 or 10 minutes before you start to eat or drink, because there's always a light film that remains on the mucosal tissue. Give that a few minutes as well. Just give it a few minutes after it's completely dissolved so you get the biggest bang for your buck.
Cheryl, can you just adjust your microphone again?
I'm sorry.
The first time you did, it was really good, and now it's just cutting out a little bit.
Okay.
And so someone said, could you just quickly repeat what you said about the sublingual product and the fruit?
All right. The sublingual product is not just, it's the mechanism of action is not just the fact that it absorbs under the tongue instead of in the stomach. It is also a system where they bind a compound from pomegranate called punicalagins, and these punicalagins hold on to the glutathione and keep it in its active form while it's being absorbed. So it's not just a matter of one or the other, it's a two-part system. So make sure that both are present so you get the right form that's going to provide active, not inactive.
Okay, thank you. I'm just scrolling to see if I see any other questions. Yes, here's a question. Is it possible to take too much? Can you overdose on glutathione?
It might hurt your pocketbook if you tried to take too many every single day. I doubt seriously that you could overdose on this. I mean, it's possible to overdose on anything. You can take too much water in, and that can make you sick. But for dosage levels of 1, 2, 3, 4, not going to be an issue. 5, 6, 7, 8, not an issue either. But I'd hate to have individuals take enormous amounts. First, that would be kind of logistically difficult. You shouldn't try, if you're taking a dose of 2, please don't use 2 at the same time. You'll look like a chipmunk. But you might overwhelm the mucosal's capacity for proper glutathione absorption. So one at a time. Leave at least a half hour to an hour between each dosing. So if you take it twice a day, then maybe first thing in the morning, half hour before breakfast, before you're putting food and water in your mouth, and then again at night when you're getting ready for bed and you're not necessarily eating or drinking. Maybe you read for a half hour before bedtime. I would not recommend putting it in your mouth and going to sleep. I don't believe anybody should have a loose object in their mouth while they're sleeping.
I think that there's a little bit of confusion because we've had a couple variations on this question. But could you just please again restate why people should be looking for a glutathione supplement that's in a reduced form?
Okay. That is kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? You want something that's more, not less, right? So reduced is simply a scientific term, which means that reduced glutathione is actually smaller than oxidized glutathione because it has capacity available to grab onto the bad stuff. So that's why they call it reduced. When I'm lecturing on glutathione, I personally call it active versus inactive because you get the idea right away. There's an active form and there's an inactive form. But technically, for those science folks in our audience, reduced is the active form and oxidized is the inactive form. So the reason they call it reduced is because it has capacity. It has room to grab onto the bad stuff, whereas oxidized has no room to grab onto the bad stuff. Does that help?
I understand it better, so thank you.
I hope. Let me know.
All right. Another question about testing, I think people are really concerned about trying to test their glutathione levels, or should they assume they have low levels if they have a disease such as Hashimoto thyroiditis?
If you have a disease, the chances that you have a less than optimal ratio of active to inactive glutathione is about 99.9%. So, I mean, you can investigate to see if there's any commercial tests available. I'm not aware of any, but by restoring active levels of glutathione, you're going to see some level of positive impact. It may be mild, it may be profound, depending upon your own situation. I saw a question in here, too, that asked if you can use more than one sublingual in your mouth at once. Let's say you're doing a sublingual B12, or maybe you're on sublingual thyroid medication. No. The reason I say no is because your mouth has a certain sublingual capacity, and I don't know what that is. And so it's better to do sublinguals one at a time to make sure that we give the mucosal tissue in our mouth adequate time to absorb the compounds that you're presenting it with.
Does the sublingual form, do you know if it can actually repair telomeres or just protect them from damage?
It can help to repair DNA, which plays a role in telomere length. The telomeres themselves, once they start to break off, they're starting to have some damage that I don't believe is reversible. So what you want to do is to get goodly amounts of glutathione on board to help protect them and keep them from further damage.
Okay, thank you. I am scrolling back to see if there are any questions that we have missed. I don't believe so. Let me just quickly go back over these.
Oh, somebody did, I don't know if you saw this, they sent it to me that there is a test from a company called Genova that shows the glutathione level, and it also shows level of glutathione peroxidase, which is an enzyme that converts GSSG back to GSH. Good, but those, number one is that knowing your overall glutathione does not necessarily show you your ratio. Kids with autism may have bountiful amounts of glutathione, but that doesn't mean that they have the right ratio. And glutathione peroxidase, it can be important to know because that's an enzyme. It's not the only thing that helps convert GSSG back to GSH, but is one of the most important things. So if you do have a deficiency in glutathione in the peroxidase form, then you are probably likely to have an overall inability to have the adequate level as well. But thank you so much, whoever shared that information.
Next question. Is glutathione, supplemental glutathione, something that you take temporarily for a year or so, or something that you would take for the rest of your life?
Well, it depends on what you're using it for. If you are using it, let's say you have serious flu, and you start on the sublingual glutathione right away. Maybe you'll take it throughout your episode of influenza, and maybe you will maybe take it a week beyond as you regain your strength. So if you have a serious onset immediately of an infective illness, maybe you have pneumonia and you want to help your immune system be stronger, then absolutely you might take it on a temporary basis. But I personally believe that the greatest promise for this glutathione is for individuals who have chronic illnesses. And I've seen a couple of folks that came in through my pathway. I'm sorry, folks, if I missed it. It's of what you sent to me, but a lot of people asking about neuropathies and diabetes. People with diabetes have some of the, on average, worst ratios of active to inactive glutathione. The disease process itself interferes with the body's ability to make glutathione and to re-energize glutathione. So if you have type 2 diabetes, especially if your blood sugars are not under particularly good control, then I think adding glutathione would be an excellent part of your wellness regimen. As far as helping the neuropathies in the feet, yes, it can be very useful for helping a variety of types of neuropathies. There are other things I might add to that wellness regimen as well, like alpha-lipoic acid, like certain vitamins and minerals that are also important for nerve repair. But yes, clinical glutathione would be useful for neuropathies as well.
A couple of people have sent in via the chat box a request for the handouts. Yes, I am seeing your request. I'm taking a note. As soon as we have concluded our presentation today, I will be forwarding the handout. So please watch your email inbox, and you should get that a few minutes after we wrap up for the day. Question, is there such a thing as a food that would increase glutathione?
Well, yes. The problem is that glutathione, even, you can't take glutathione in orally in food because it would oxidize just like other types of oral glutathione would be. But there are precursors in food. Some of the cruciferous vegetables that are so healthy and so anti-cancer, some of their activity might be that they help with glutathione in the body, like cabbage and Brussels sprouts and bok choy. Garlic, I believe, has been shown to help raise glutathione levels in the body as well. So who knows, all this time when we look at some of these healthy foods, perhaps part of the reason that they have such an incredible reputation for being superfoods is because they help spur a little bit of extra glutathione synthesis.
All right, I do not see any questions. I think we've moved through all the questions that I had in my queue.
I had one that came to me that personally, forgive me folks, sometimes they come into me and no one else can see them, and I wanted to know if there's any dangers in using the product long-term and using sublingual glutathione long-term. None that I'm aware of, and there have been individuals who have used IV glutathione for very long periods of time with periodic administrations. I know they've been using this sublingual glutathione in France, the one that's stabilized with the pomegranate, punicalagins, for about 18 months, almost 2 years now. And it would just make sense to me that if you have a chronic problem, you're always going to be not blessed in the glutathione realm, and anything you can do to help boost that would